Action!
Hello, and welcome to the latest episode of the Grudge Report, where we talk about the foundation. My name is Margaret Reeb, and I work at the SETI Institute, and I am joined, as always, by Franck Marchis, who's Chief Science Officer at Unistellar, as well as Senior Astronomer at the SETI Institute. And like I said, we're going to talk about the latest episode of the Foundation, Episode 3, The Mathematician's Ghost. So spoiler warning, if you aren't caught up through Episode 3 of Apple TV's The Foundation, turn back now because we are going to overanalyze the science and many other aspects of this episode. Franck, before we dive into the details, what did you think of this episode? How are you liking the series so far?
I totally love this episode. I really like the rhythm. I know people have been criticizing about the fact that it's slow, but I've been criticizing the recent movies, especially the Walt Disney movie. I'm not going to say which one, but if you look here, you know what I'm talking about, which are extremely fast-paced, and you have no time to enjoy really the world, to see the details, etc. With this show, I don't know how many episodes they're planning. I heard 80. So it's great. I love it. It reminds me some of the science fiction show from the 90s, with the music, with the rhythm, with the fact that we see the beautiful world and we enjoyed basically being immersed into this futuristic world.
Yeah, you definitely have time to enjoy the settings and really feel like you can occupy the space with the characters. This episode is divided into two big chunks, as far as I recall. One, the first chunk starts on Trantor, and the second part of the episode deals with what's happening on Terminus. And I think it's worth mentioning as well that Isaac Asimov's the first Foundation book, it's chunked out into different bits of time. So you see one set of characters and their conflict, and then you fast forward several hundred years and you time hop through this plot, which I think is one of the big challenges of translating this to the screen. And we see a little bit of time hopping here in this episode, but I thought they did a really great job with it. So let's start talking about Trantor. And this plot line is Dusk, who we saw earlier in the series. He's now come to the point where he's dying and they're going to terminate him. And we go through this long process of him getting ready, of him speaking with his clones, and kind of coming to terms with the fact that he's going to die. Did you have any takeaways here, Franck, or any thoughts?
So one thing is that he's not dying. He's going to become Brother Darkness. They don't say the word dying. It's as if his final fitting, but they don't really say the word. They give him a name just before he enters into this machine, which disintegrates him.
Right, which kills him.
Yeah.
They do a great job of not saying the word.
They don't die. Don't forget. They don't lie because the dreams live on in you. And the other brothers answer back because you kept it alive in you. I think this is a very important scene because we see the continuation and the idea behind all of this cloning. It's basically they claim they don't die. They die, but they don't die. The characters stay the same. The personality will remain the same over time as the Cleon become 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. I think this one is Cleon 14, if I remember. That's correct?
The painter.
Yeah, the painter. So yes, I
think it's a great scene. I'm curious. I'm not a psychologist or a neuroscientist, but I don't know if just because you're a clone, you have the same personality, because your personality is also based on the things that happen to you.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Maybe they are raised in the same way as each other.
Well, they are, because remember, they grew up together, the three of them. So, and they have the same kind of dinners and place. So I think it changed, of course. That's why we see one is they show the previous Cleon and they give names to them. I forgot, but there is the thinker, etc. So some of them have different traits, personality traits, more or less enhanced. He's the painter, he's the artist, basically. But ultimately, they have the same way probably of thinking on the major decision to take. It provides a stability to the empire. And Demoiselle show that in this first 18 minutes of this episode, we clearly see the importance of Demoiselle. She's here with Cleon the First. She's here telling him that you're gonna die, you're gonna die, I'm gonna stay here. And she basically the skeleton of the empire system. She's the one organizing everything. She's the one singing lullabies to the babies in the womb. That's
Yes.
And pushing the emperor to die. You notice that he has a moment where he doesn't want to do it, and she's pushing.
Oh yeah, he's scared. He says something's wrong, and she says no, and she sort of takes him to become Brother Darkness. Yes, it's interesting that she is a robot, and everybody in this culture seems to be scared of robots, but she's really the common denominator that's moving things along.
Exactly.
I wonder if there's something there about why they rely on cloning versus trying to live forever, becoming immortal. I think that is where you defeat the processes that break your body down, and there's just one Cleon that persists for a really long time. Because there's been a lot of buzz lately, at least in science that I've seen, about working past aging and transcending death. So I don't know. That's an interesting kind of cultural thing that's going on there. Do you have any thoughts, Franck?
It's surprising that far away in this future, people still age the same way that we do. And I also know I don't have exact calculation, but it seems that they don't live that long, because you can count the number of regeneration of Cleons divided by the number of years since Cleon the First, and it's almost the same than our time. So meaning that Cleons live almost the same amount of times that we live at the moment. So there is no change in the longevity of life, which is surprising because, as you mentioned, there is a lot of research at the moment to make humans live longer. This is part of the transhumanism movement, which is to basically end death, and by that, curing sicknesses, regenerating body parts, and we don't know if it's possible. It's a goal. We don't know yet if it's truly possible. So maybe what happened is that they found out that it's not possible. Maybe they found out that the organ which is the most important in the human being, especially the personality of a human, the brain, may not be regenerable somehow. And they decided to stop to end this idea of longevity and go more for cloning in this case.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, a lot of people think that you're right, like the brain is going to be hard to preserve, but you can put elements of the brain in a machine, perhaps, and that won't break down. But it seems like this culture is afraid of machines. So there's some interesting interplay there. Anything else on Trantor before we move to Terminus?
No, I love the scene of Demoiselle singing the lullaby to the baby in the womb. There's something also that we may do in the future, having human babies outside of the mother womb. This may happen. There is already the first, I think it was a sheep that was born like this recently. It happened like 2 years ago. So this is a research which is happening at the moment, and it may be possible in 20 years to have babies without having to carry the baby. We can discuss about that and the consequences of this in society, humanity, and emotional as well. I don't have much view on that.
I do, but I'll save it for another podcast. Let's talk about Terminus, because this is sort of where a lot of the real-time things are happening, at least. This is the outpost of the Encyclopedias, the Foundation, and we see that a sort of culture has sprung up from this settlement where it looks like there are encyclopedias, and then there are folks like Salvo who are trying to keep everyone safe and understand Terminus. And we mentioned earlier that this show allows you to really sink into the environment. And because of that, there's some interesting things going on Terminus. And one of them, you can kind of see the outline here. Franck, did you notice the multiple moons?
Yes, of course. That's the first thing I noticed when I saw we see, especially at the beginning, the spacecraft, when the spacecraft arrive close to Terminus, we see two moons. And we see the moons kind of well, and you see the surface of the moon is grayish, like in our own moon. So I don't know, in you design behind you, there is three moons, but in fact, I never seen three moons in this episode. I always see two moons. So maybe there is two, maybe there is three. We don't know. But one thing which is important is that the moon seems to be inhabited, not habitable. And you don't see anything on the moon. Okay, it's like our moon, grayish, probably without an atmosphere, so relatively small. And the planet Terminus is bigger. Okay. Bigger to the point that it has the same size probably than Earth because of the gravity. I was looking at the way people run and walk. I know, overanalyzing again. And obviously the gravity on Terminus is similar to the gravity of Earth. And since gravity is a terrestrial planet, we can assume that the mass of the mass, then the size of Terminus is similar to the mass and size of Earth. So that's two.
Even though it's orbiting a red dwarf.
Yes, there's no consequences. The gravity is purely coming from the planet itself when you close to the planet. Yeah. So, but then the moons is a problem to me because the moons are huge in the sky. You notice that too, right?
Are they orbiting around each other and then around their star?
Multiple times we see them from far away in space, and they seems to be orbiting at a different distance from the planet. Sorry, and they seems to be orbiting around the planet, right? You see, the phase are the same. For instance, when the spacecraft arrives, so they are truly orbiting the planet. My problem is that so big in the sky, I mean, multiple times there seems to be different size, but roughly I estimated in some of the show that they are like 5 to 10 times bigger than the moon, our moon. So it means that they are 5 to 10 times closer to the planet than our moon. Okay, and that's a problem to me because there is something that moons and moon, only one moon will do to a planet. It's to produce what we call tide, right? Those tides are stronger if the moon is stronger, but in fact, what is very important in the tide is the distance between the two objects. So let me explain that better. So you have two objects, the planet Terminus and one of the moon. Let's just take one moon at the moment, okay? Because Terminus is spinning on itself in a few hours. We know that because in the show, we see the beginning and the end of a day. And it seems to last, it doesn't last like years, it lasts 100 hours, it lasts 20 hours roughly, right? So this planet is spinning. And the moon is orbiting around the planet, okay? At probably a period of multiple days, like our moon is in 20-ish days, 28 days, 29 days. So what happened is that because of the gravitational effect of the moon on the planet, and because the planet is not a solid rock, the planet is basically squeezed slightly by the presence of the moon. And that's produced the bulge we see. And this bulge, if you have a planet made of water, you can see clearly with the tides of the ocean. That's what comes from the tides, basically. And that's why the tides are related to the spin of the planet. But there is also a bulge, smaller one, that we don't see as human, but machine can detect, which is due to the deformation of the crust of the planet. So here we have a planet with a moon the size of our moon, very close to the planet, 5-10 times closer, and the strength of the tides is vary with the inverse as the cube of the distance. So if the distance is very close, the strength is significantly closer, right? Because it varies by by 1 over r to the 3. So it implies that the planet is being deformed as well. So what will happen to a human being on the surface of the planet? Well, they will feel earthquakes every time the planet spins on itself, basically. So the planet should be, of course, I can make more detailed calculation. This is an estimate. But from that, I will assume that the planet will be basically having repetitive earthquake due to the fact that the moons are so strong and so close. And we don't see that in the show, but maybe in the future something will happen and will tell us that there is earthquake in the inner part of the planet. I don't know. I'm making up stories here. But that's the size of the moon is beautiful for the movie, but I don't think it's realistic for the planet as it is right now. It should be a planet which has a gigantic volcanic activity, a planet which has earthquake, and not an habitable planet.
Yes, I thought the same thing. I thought it was beautiful, but if I saw that, I would be very scared because I would think something is going to happen. It's going to upset my planet and make it not great to live on.
And one thing I didn't say is that there is 2 moons at least. So the strength of the tides will change over time with the period of rotation of the moon. So when the moons are aligned, for instance, the strength is significantly, the intensity is stronger. So the squeezing is stronger. So I can imagine it would be a huge earthquake in this case.
And lots of volcanoes, like you were saying.
Lots of volcanoes. Like on Io, for instance. It will be a lava world. Yeah.
A lava world. Well, it's not a lava world because we have 2 types of creatures that we see on Terminus. One we've seen before in a hologram, and we've also heard a lot about it, the Bishop's Claw, which is like a lion kind of space creature. That's what I thought, like a cougar or something like that you would have up here in the Pacific Northwest. And the other, I don't know if they have a name for it, but it's like a little bird.
Yeah, it's kind of a little bird. Yeah. So yeah, the little bird, we see it in the hands. It's a size kind of like of a bird. He has wings, which looks like the wings of bats more than the wings of birds or butterfly. He has this weird shape, which is very similar to the shape of the bishop claw in terms of the structure. I don't know. I tried to stop the image. We don't see much about it, but there is some similarities between the 2 species. And those are endemic species, meaning that they come from the planet, obviously. And maybe that's normal. They share common heritage, because remember that we human and plants and so on here come from the same species in the tree of life, right? And in fact, mammals, when they split, they're very similar in the structure of the body and so on. So maybe that's what we're seeing here. It's an entire biosphere, which is different, starting from a different species long time ago. But now the species that you see are kind of similar into the appearance, the physics.
They're eukaryotes, correct? They're multi-celled organisms, right?
I made a mistake in the bishop claw. I remember I said he has huge eyes, and in fact, he does not. He has multiple eyes. Now we see it better.
Like a bug.
Yeah, like a bug. He does look like a dragon more than a cougar in the show and when we see.
Yes, it has the same color and kind of harsh outer skin or whatever that the little bird creature does too. So maybe, like you were saying, there's some heritage there, a trait that helps both creatures survive on this planet.
Yeah, it could be that all the species had to face high radiation, so they have the same kind of skin. I call it skin, but something to protect themselves. Or maybe the temperature variation is so important that they have to have this hard, more thicker skin that we have on our own planet. So all of the animals share the same kind of environment. They are in the same environment, so obviously they will share some similar traits. Colors as well. You notice that he has more or less the same color, the birds, than the bishop claw. But I like the fact that we can see those species, and they try to put some similarities. I think there is some biologists involved in the story here who gave this as a recommendation.
Yes. And I just like thinking about it from the perspective of SETI, of how hard is it for life to evolve on a planet?
Mm-hmm.
And after life, single cell into eukaryotes, which are quite complex multicellular life forms, and then you have such different types of life forms on the planet, it seems like, how hard is that process? We don't know. But in this world, it seems like life does spring up quite a lot on different planets throughout the universe, which is interesting. So anything else on the background, Terminus, the species, kind of what we see?
I want to talk about the vault because that's a perfect transition to what you just said. So the vault, maybe you can remind the people what the vault is.
So the vault is this structure right here that was on Terminus when the Foundation arrived. They don't know what it is. In my opinion, it's not organic, but we don't know. And it has what they call the null field around it. So generally when people try and approach it, they pass out, except for Salvo, who is now the warden of Terminus. She seems to be able to pass through it because there's something special with her. I think that's very clear from the episode. There's something special. She's a key part of this plot. And so also what Salvo realizes is that the null field is expanding. That's one of the things we find out in this episode. So what do you find interesting about
in the beginning of when they arrive on the planet, there is mentioned the fact they discover quickly the existence of the vault. Okay. So first of all, it's very interesting that they arrive on a planet the size of Earth. Okay. And the first thing they see when they land is the vault, which is something like 4 meters by 4 meters, something like this. So the coincidence is absolutely amazing to me that they landed exactly at the place where there is the vault. Okay, but let's because frankly,
psychohistory. Maybe Harry or somebody knew.
Okay, so then let's talk about the fact that psychohistory basically determine everything, where they're gonna land, when, etc. They follow Harry's recommendation, but something that he did not say is the existence of the vault. He did not mention anywhere that there will be something like that, a pyramidal shaped thing floating in space, okay, because it's floating on top of this. And so they have this conversation. It's not a conversation, there is the voice explaining that maybe this is a surveillance outpost sent by the Cleons. So basically, the Emperor wants to know what's going on Terminus and decided to send this vault at the speed faster than the speed of the spaceship. So fast using the supraluminic, I'm gonna call it like that now, transportation system, and set it up this. But they have never seen that technology apparently. So it's kind of weird. And that's the most interesting part to me. They say maybe this is aliens. Maybe this is made by aliens. So why this is interesting is because in the show, we go from planet to planet. We talk a lot about planets. We see humans everywhere. Nowhere we see intelligent aliens. We can see animals.
Other than Homo sapiens. Like there's no other life form.
No.
I guess is a bishop claw technically an alien?
Yeah, but he's not intelligent to the point that he can build
well, it seems like the lines are blurring a little bit, and it also doesn't seem like they're scared by that prospect, which is interesting to me. But we don't see.
She dropped that in the conversation, and there is no reaction. Like if they had seen aliens in the past, and now they're not there. So that's. I of course I work at the SETI Institute, so of course I catch this only piece of moment where they say the word aliens and technology here. So I'm very curious to know what this vault is all about, and why did they call it the vault? By the way, why? I will see something like this. I will not call it a vault. I don't know. I will give it a different.
I guess they think there's something inside, but I don't know what because it's an odd shape. I'm not sure. I certainly. If I landed I would make my outpost as far away from it as possible because I would not, if I didn't know what it was, I wouldn't, then I'd maybe hop over to the moon and see if I could live there instead. Because the humans in this show are obviously very advanced, so they may feel like they would be able to take on an alien species or at least hold their own, but this is an outpost here, and I don't know. We'll see.
We will see.
It was an aside that was very interesting that we're over analyzing, and I love it. Anything else on the vault?
No, that's all for the vault. I think we're gonna know more soon.
Okay, let's talk about. I know you want to talk about it. Let's talk about the telescope in this episode.
No, we should talk. Yeah, but let's put this context first. I'm surprised you mentioned the sense of Hugo.
Oh, yes. Oh, Hugo.
Your favorite new character.
No, I'm not a fan. I just think there's like that trope of like the swashbuckling. I would prefer Han Solo or Indiana Jones. This guy's not doing it for me, but he's integral to the plot. And one thing that I did like is that, again, like I said earlier, the foundation, the book has different parts. And the evolution of the foundation and how they are staying alive. And I won't say too much, but one part talks about trade. Trade becomes very important. And he's the first individual in the show who's a trader and who is sort of, going from all these different places. And I thought that was a good nod to the book and what may happen later. But he and Salvo are in some type of relationship. And they look through a telescope at different planets, it sounds like.
Yes, they have this romantic moment where Hugo decided to show her where he went, probably, something like this. So he thought it was a romantic moment to do stargazing together. And for that, they use a telescope. So, a telescope which is not big. You notice it's almost the size of this one.
It is almost the size of, hold it up for everyone to see. Yes.
All right. So this is a telescope from our year 2020, right? They're using a telescope which is kind of almost the same size. They look with a kind of two eyes. And he's showing her planets, exoplanets. He's telling her, I went to Arena 4. Which is probably the fourth planet in the system called Arena, because that would be a logical way to call it. And they also observe at sunset, which is kind of great. We don't observe at sunset, especially when we want to see far away, because when you want to observe something in visible light, you need to make sure you're not the gigantic ball of fire in the sky called the sun or the star is far away, so you can see the stars, and you can basically collect the light of the star to see them in your telescope. So this kind of made me think a lot about what exactly it's happening here. The technology must be extremely different to the technology we are using on those normal telescopes, because they're observing almost in full day, and they can see planets. So you know that planets are difficult to see, right?
Yeah. Have we imaged an exoplanet? I know we detect them by using the light of the sun or the star that's one method. And from that, we can discern different aspects of the exoplanet. But have we imaged the planet itself?
Yes. We, in 2015, we announced the discovery of a planet called 51 Eridani b around 51 Eridani, which was a Jupiter-sized planet. So we have been imaging exoplanets, true, but they are generally large exoplanets, and we use 8-meter class telescope to do that, and adaptive optics and coronagraph, and it's very difficult. We have been trying to image exoplanets for the past 10 years, and we have an handful number of them at the moment. But those are gigantic exoplanets. In this case, he described Arena 4, and I think he said he went there. I'm not 100% sure. Someone will correct me. And they observe in this tiny telescope, and they observe in full day. So I have no idea the technology they're using. But frankly, I just would love to travel over there to just dismantle this telescope to really understand what they're doing, because that's amazing. That's amazing to get with such a small instrument the contrast sufficient to be able to detect a planet which is 1 billion times fainter than the star with just such a small instrument. So that's true science fiction to me. That's amazing.
Because the images that we've taken are big, so they're generally gas planets. I'm guessing Jupiter-sized gas planets, and if the image is against the light of the star that it's orbiting, correct? The way he's talking is he can like look and see the trees on the planet, which is not, we have to, because the stars are so bright in these other systems, all of our observations have to kind of work off of the sun of that system, correct?
There is 2 problems. One, the planet is much fainter than the star. So that's what we call the contrast issue. So we need to get to be able to see something 1 billion stars fainter than the planet. And on the top of that, if you want to see details on the surface of the planet, with our technology at the moment and our knowledge of physics, you need to have a huge aperture telescope, something gigantic. Like to be able to see trees on a planet in orbit around Alpha Centauri, you will need a telescope with a baseline of 1,000 kilometers or something like that, if I remember. So not this tiny instrument that we can see, okay, that they're using, something way, way bigger. But of course, this is with the physics that we are using now in our knowledge. Maybe something will happen in the future that we will be able to do better than that. Or maybe this is not a telescope. Maybe it is just a tiny visualizer. Help me with this word.
Visualizer?
Yes. And they're just looking, and there is a probe floating around Arena the 4 taking picture, and they're just looking. But in this case, it's not romantic stargazing. It's just watching a TV, an advanced TV.
Outside, for whatever reason.
In the cold. Because it's romantic. It's like, I don't know, maybe, let's ask our partners to go outside in the cold by -10 degrees Celsius in the windy condition to just watch Netflix together.
Yes, exactly. Oh, man, that would not go over well. But
No.
I thought of you when I saw this, because my first thought was, what are they looking at during the day? And Franck is going to love this. Those are the 2 thoughts that I had. Anything else in this episode? We have, it ends on a cliffhanger because the Anacreons have arrived.
One thing I didn't mention to you, but Hugo is a thespian. And he said that he does remember the bombing. You remember? He said he was there when it happened. He's one of the survivors.
Yes. I'm glad you brought this up because I had a thought on this. Yes.
So that was because the bombing happened 70 years ago or something like that. Do you see how young he looks?
It's because he's traveling through hyperspace, correct?
I don't know.
That's what he says. He says that he's been traveling around. And what it made me think of is, how would you manage time across the universe when you have people moving at different speeds? And so they are experiencing time in a different way, because he says he's 70, and I'm guessing that's him counting time as he experiences it. But that would be different for our people on Terminus, including Salvo.
Yeah.
Like, he could leave and be going really fast in a spaceship. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Salvo would be older, correct? Because his time is slowed down as his speed increases.
So this is a very complicated problem that I don't think we're going to solve in this show, in this conversation. But
did I steal your line, Franck?
No, I didn't think about the time travel. For me, he has implants. I was very basic here, and I thought he has simply implants, and he looks younger because of that. And let's go back to the beginning of our conversation when we talk about cloning versus life forever. It seems that the thespian in my mind, they have implants and they are capable of living longer. They chose this path.
Interesting. Yeah, because that could lead to the reason why they're sort of on the outs with the empire, because they have different cultural values for something so integral.
So maybe we're gonna be, maybe we're right, but we see. I think there is something interesting between the relationship between the Thespian and the other one, the Anacreon, that comes at the end of the show. There is something here that we are going to explore. There is a fundamental difference between those two civilizations. They're human, but they have chosen different paths, I think. The Anacreon seems to be very, we're not into hunting. Remember that they give this bow in the first episode and explaining that this is the bow, and you see them at when they kill or try to kill the Bishop Claw. They all were having bows, like they're hunters, even though they're spaceship. And the Thespian seems to be an advanced civilization that has implants, so can live forever using technology and biotechnology. So I think there is some interesting conversation that's going to come soon between those two civilizations. And Terminus, the Foundation people are in the middle of that.
Well, I think in the book, this isn't too spoilery, but the Anacreons, they don't have very much metal. They have mostly wood, which is why, they use bow and arrows for at least a part of their timeline. And I think there might be something with, resources amongst the 3 planets, and trade comes into play. I don't know where the show is going to go, but we'll see. I agree. There's going to be something that comes up that, speaks to the fundamental differences of these different human cultures, which is interesting. Anything else, Franck, or should we wrap it up for today?
I just want to mention that this is kind of a friend of mine who works in movie told me that this is what we call a breather episode. Basically, something happened very intense in episode 2. We are all waiting to know what happened to Gal and to Rich and everybody, Harry and so on. We have no idea. They totally ignored this part of the story. Only twice they talk about Harry. They showed a statue of him, and that's all. So yeah, I'm looking forward to watch episode 4. In fact, I was hoping to record this as soon as possible because that's what I'm gonna do this afternoon or this evening.
Yes, me as well. So you may see another episode from us drop pretty quickly. Thank you so much for tuning in and listening to us discuss and overanalyze the Foundation. I'm Margaret. That's Franck. We're not together this week. We're together in spirit. If you enjoy the Grudge Report, please click one of the mini buttons below. You can stay updated on new episode drops. You can read about the SETI Institute, which is the reason this is all possible. The SETI Institute is a nonprofit that's focused on understanding and exploring life in the universe. So if you like what we talk about on the show, check out our website. If you're so inclined, drop us a couple dollars. We would very much appreciate it. And we will see you next time.
Bye-bye.